This is Ghost, and her existence was classified for 4 years. Despite her looks, she's not a catamaran. Ghost is a boat attached to 2 giant submarines that for the most part fly underwater, through air. But why the US government slapped secrecy orders on this privately built boat, calling it dangerous, to the extent that they didn't even want allied countries to have her, and how this boat can fly underwater, is not what you think. The Ghost was built privately. In fact, the boat's inventor, Greg Sankoff, spent $5 million of his own money to hire engineers and naval experts to make the Ghost project happen. Of course, the idea was to eventually market it to the US military. But why did Sankoff think that the US Navy would be interested in his invention? On October 12, 2000, while docked at the port of Aden in Yemen, USS Cole was hit by a small boat that was loaded with explosives and piloted by 2 terrorists. The explosion from the suicide attack created a 40-foot wide hole near the waterline and severely damaged the $1 billion ship. 17 American sailors lost their lives and 40 other crew members were injured. In the aftermath of the attack, Greg Sankoff started wondering about a gunship which could neutralize this type of threat. Furthermore, Sankoff came across a US Navy wargame report called Juliet, which simulated the US Navy attacking a force of small, high-speed boats. The simulation estimated the US Navy suffering about 20,000 casualties in 2 days. This motivated Sankoff to start a new company, Juliet Marine Systems, named after the report itself, and the work began on a prototype which would eventually become the Ghost. The threat of small boats that could disable much larger warships is not a new idea. Small torpedo boats of the early 20th century did exactly that to the battleships. Until 2011, the Ghost project was kept a secret. All the testing was happening at night. But on August 11, 2011, the US Navy removed the secrecy order, and some $22 million of private money later, the Ghost made its first public appearance. A striking feature of this boat is stealth. The Ghost has a very low radar cross-section for its size, meaning that most larger ships won't pick her up on their radars. And while this makes Ghost a great candidate for reconnaissance operations, her primary mission is fleet defense. A squadron of Ghost-like craft could protect a flotilla of larger warships near shore against smaller maritime threats, be it terrorist boats or unmanned maritime systems. The Ghost can be equipped with a M197 20mm rotary cannon, as well as missiles like the Griffin or advanced precision kill weapon system rockets. Aside from fleet defense, the vessel can also conduct anti-submarine warfare, piracy protection, and mine countermeasures. Plus, it has a variety of sensors for reconnaissance purposes. Ghost can also carry 18 Navy SEALs, making for a great assault vehicle. That said, there was also plenty of criticism. When the Ghost was made public, critics immediately started pointing out that the vessel doesn't have the range or logistics to withstand blue water operations, at least not without some sort of mothership. While it's worth noting that this boat can fit inside the well deck of various amphibious assault ships and even be transported inside a C-17 cargo plane, the Ghost was developed to operate in very specific geographical areas. Which brings up the question, aside from stealth, what makes the Ghost superior to traditional patrol boats? Small patrol boats are quite unstable in high seas, moving up and down and side to side with the motion of the waves. This makes it incredibly difficult to drink a cup of coffee or launch any sort of weapons from patrol boats during higher sea states. The solution to that problem is using a ship design called SWAT, which stands for Small Waterplane Area Twin Hull. SWAT ships are different from catamarans in that they are less susceptible to wave motion due to their narrow waterline. The twin hulls that provide the bulk of the displacement are completely submerged, and this reduces the effects of wave action. The Ghost is effectively a boat that rides on two fins attached to two submarines which have 22 different underwater control surfaces. This makes for a complex design, since all of the machinery, such as two gas turbine engines, two giant 800-gallon fuel bladders, and propellers, have to be located inside the 62-foot submarine-shaped pontoons. But on the plus side, having the propulsion system underwater increases survivability. Since swath rides below the water impacts are greatly diminished because water only hits the very sharp struts of the vessel, which produce negligible stability issues. This results in an incredibly smooth ride. You could drink coffee in 6-foot waves with no problem. The Ghost can handle waves up to 10 feet high with a maximum range of 500 miles. But there was a little problem. Propellers are typically placed aft of a boat, which push the vessel forward. But this would have created structural problems for the Ghost. So the propellers were instead placed in the front, effectively pulling the boat forward. But this unusual propeller placement created a revolutionary advantage, reducing drag with the help of cavitation. There are two ways to boil water. You could increase the temperature, or you could reduce the surrounding pressure. Either method generates bubbles. Cavitation, simply put, is the formation of bubbles on the propeller. When a propeller spins, it produces areas of lower pressure around its blades, causing the water to boil in ambient temperature. This creates a trail of bubbles. We said earlier that the boat flies through air, which wasn't exactly correct. What's inside the bubbles is not air, it's water vapor. Now, if the propeller is placed in the back of the boat, these bubbles are simply exhausted. But if you put the propellers in front of the vessel, just like it was done with the Ghost, they form underwater gas tunnels around the giant pontoons, which create 900 times less hull friction than if they were just moving through water. This gives the Ghost superior efficiency with a top speed of 40 knots, making it the fastest swath ship on the planet. However, there are potential drawbacks to placing a propeller in the front of a boat, because if the boat hits something head-on, the boat is dead in water, not to mention hitting any fish nets or floating debris in the water. As a side note, hydrofoils were faster and have been around for a long time, but they had a similar issue with the foils getting damaged frequently. Juliet Marine Systems were even planning on designing future iterations of the Ghost to reach a speed of 70 knots. Spoiler alert, the whole company went under because the US military was not interested. But why? According to Jay Cohen, a retired US Navy Rear Admiral and Juliet Marine Systems advisor, it was either incompetence at its height or it's a Machiavellian plot. And you know what? It's somewhere in between the two. Back in 2009, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, offered a contract to Juliet Marine Systems in exchange for all its patent rights. But Sankoff didn't want to lose his intellectual property because he saw commercial value in civilian applications of his patents. Instead, the Ghost was offered to the US Navy at a $10 million price tag. The US Navy's initial interest in the vessel eventually faded away for a variety of reasons. One reason was that they preferred large-hull blue water ships that were also capable of inshore operations, instead of a small craft that could only perform inshore missions. But the Navy was also quite apprehensive about working with new technologies, let alone startups, especially after the fiascos with Zumwalt and the Littoral combat ships. The Navy wasn't interested in Juliet's scaled-up 150-foot version of the Ghost either. After Sankoff rejected the offer from DARPA, the US government slammed secrecy orders over 4 patents, which prevented Juliet Marine Systems from publicizing its technology. The secrecy order was recommended by the Office of Naval Research, which called the Ghost technology dangerous. The secrecy orders were lifted and reinstated multiple times. According to Sankoff, he believed that the US government simply wanted him to go out of business so no other countries could have his technology. In 2014, the US Department of State permitted foreign military sales discussions with South Korea, but prior to any meetings, Juliet Marine Systems had to file paperwork with the State Department, which would in turn run it by the US Navy. The meetings were approved, but there were plenty of caveats, including things that prevented the company from talking to foreign buyers about the Ghost boat or its supercavitating hull technology. It was a catch-22. Having such business challenges, in 2016, Juliet Marine Systems was forced to lay off 17 of its 20 employees and then go to court against the US government. In 2021, the Ghost was listed for sale for a bargain price of $2 million. Currently, the Ghost is permanently located on display in Albacore Park next to USS Albacore in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's ironic how history repeats itself. In the early 20th century, the invention of torpedoes allowed small boats to launch a weapon which could cripple much larger cruisers and battleships. In response, a new class of ships was invented, torpedo boat destroyers, whose mission was to haunt torpedo boats. Over time, the destroyers got larger and heavier, to the point that now they need a small and fast boat to protect them from the attack boats and unmanned maritime systems. So it's likely just a matter of time before boats like the Ghost become part of many navies around the world.